Well, thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'd like to introduce Stephen Ragsdale, who's a diversity, inclusion, and equity consultant and associate faculty at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Stephen?
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining us today. We are very pleased to be able to welcome you to Johns Hopkins in the greater Washington area, our virtual town hall meeting on your legal rights as with respect to COVID-19. Johns Hopkins in the greater Washington area includes Sibley Memorial Hospital in Washington, D.C., Suburban Hospital in Bethesda, Maryland, the Johns Hopkins Cancer Center to include the Johns Hopkins Proton Therapy Center, the Johns Hopkins Community Physicians Primary Care Practices, the outpatient imaging and surgery centers, and a whole array of healthcare services in the metro area. Today, we are using our expertise to address the coronavirus pandemic, what we've learned in treating patients, how to protect our visitors, and a little bit more about an array of healthcare services. That's why we're here today, to make sure that you have the most up-to-date and critical information in these unprecedented times. Before we get started, I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to our invited guests. We have three magnificent speakers today. Melissa Bird, who's the Senior Deputy Director and Medicaid Director of the Department of Healthcare Finance. Lori Leibowitz, the Managing Attorney of the Housing Practice at Neighborhood Legal Services, and Christina Majewski, an attorney with the pro bono access to justice practice at the Legal Counsel for the Elderly. Thank you for taking time to join us today. This is really important. This is really critical times, and this is really important information that you're here to garner. And we're taking this very seriously. In today's meeting, we're going to get into your legal rights with respect to COVID-19. These are unprecedented times, and we're learning a lot as we go along. We're going to talk about wills and advance directives and powers of attorney, and how to distinguish between the two, and what you'll need in order to kind of fulfill those obligations. We want to talk about evictions, foreclosures, and protections when it comes to your homes and your housing, what kind of resources and payment plans, how you can arrange to keep your walls around you. And thirdly, Medicaid, we want to focus on the Medicaid population and the uninsured, and how we may be able to help. We'll take questions at the end. Since this is on Zoom, you can use the Q&A feature, or you can send us email at JHConnects, CONNECTS @jhu.edu. Again, that email address is JHConnects, CONNECTS @jhu.edu. Just a quick reminder during this call, this year is a census year. This is really, really, really important times, right? In the sense that this is the time where we get counted. This is around resource distribution and the whole 9 yards. DC's numbers have been traditionally low, much lower than the national average. Remember, there's still time to complete your census. The opportunity only comes around like every 10 years. A census survey should be submitted for every single household in Washington, well, actually in the country, but we specifically want to focus on what's going on in Washington, D.C. If you need assistance or if you have any questions, you can reach out to that same email address, jhconnects@jhu.edu. And with that said, let's kick off this conversation with Lori Leibowitz. about information on evictions, foreclosures, protections, and payment plans. Thank you again for joining us.
Hello. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, everyone, for coming to this. I will start by saying that my expertise is mostly in evictions, so that will be most of my focus, but I'll mention foreclosures a little bit. And I want to start by talking about what your rights are all the time, because in DC we actually have some really important rights around eviction all the time. And then I'm going to talk about what your additional rights are during the public health emergency. So starting with all the time, the most important thing you need to know, and the thing, I don't want anyone to leave this call confused on this, is you can only be evicted with a court order. Your landlord can't just say, like, hey, I want you to leave. Your landlord cannot change the locks without a court order. And in fact, your landlord can only change the locks if that process is being supervised by a US Marshal. So evictions in DC can only happen if a landlord has gone through an entire court process, has filed a complaint in court, has given you opportunity to show up in court, and a judge has ordered that you can be evicted, and then your landlord has given you additional notice, and then the marshals show up with a locksmith. So there are a lot of steps between I didn't pay my rent or my landlord is accusing me of breaching the lease and eviction all the time, and even more so now, but I'll get to that in a minute. So your landlord can't just kick you out. In DC, your landlord also can only go through that kind of process if they have a reason. They can't just say, we had a year-long lease, the year is up, it's been a pleasure, bye, I'm gonna go rent to someone else. No, they can only evict you for one of 10 specific reasons listed in the law. Most commonly, non-payment of rent or breaching the lease, but also they're gonna move into the place themselves, or they're going to sell it to someone who's going to move in themselves, or they're going to like gut the place or something like that. Just because they're selling the house doesn't mean you need to leave. If the new owner is going to rent it, they have to rent it to you. So again, unlike in some other jurisdictions, you can't be, your landlord can't just end your lease because they feel like it. They can only end your lease if there's a specific reason. You also don't need to have a written lease. You are a tenant with a lease. If you had a conversation with the landlord, hey, I'm moving into your place, I'm going to pay you $1,000 a month. Here's $1,000. You are now a tenant. That is an oral lease. It is done. So, important things to know. Your landlord is obligated to keep your apartment or your home in good condition. It has to be habitable. There can't be leaks or mold or mice or cockroaches or all kinds of gross things that my clients tell me about all the time. None of those things are allowed. And you have legal rights. If your landlord is not fixing those things, you should call an attorney or you should call DCRA. And we're going to put up a phone number for. Actually, can we switch the slide to the phone number slide now? Maybe, Marty. So I'm keeping that up. If I'm talking and you think your legal rights are being violated, you can call that number anytime, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and actually all 6 organizations that do eviction and tenants' rights work in DC answer that phone number and take cases from it. So I will say the phone number for the people on the phone, and I'm going to say it many times throughout this. So the phone number is 202-780-2575. And I'll say it like 7 more times, so don't worry if you didn't get it that time. Your landlord also, again, we're still on the rights you have all the time. Your landlord must give you notice before entering your apartment for non-emergency reasons. If there's like an emergency leak up, if you're on the 2nd floor and there's a leak coming, or and your apartment is leaking onto the first floor and your landlord needs to come in and fix it, they can do that. But if it's not an emergency, then they need to give you notice. Okay, now during this time, during the public health emergency, which I believe now goes through July 24th, for the moment, your landlord, you still have to pay rent. Everybody, you still have to pay rent. But if you can't pay rent, or if you are late paying your rent, your landlord cannot charge you late fees during this time. So starting March 11th through July 24th, or whenever the public health emergency ends, public health emergency not to be confused with stay-at-home order. Public health emergency, any of the phases of reopening. Your landlord cannot charge you late fees. Your landlord cannot increase your rent. No rent increases can go into effect March 11th. And if you had a rent increase go into effect starting after March 11th, you should just go back to paying your old amount because that's what you owe. No rent increases. And after the public health emergency is over, your landlord has to give you a new notice of increase. Whatever notice they gave you earlier, gone, not valid. No utility shutoffs during the public health emergency and for 15 days after. And that includes water, electricity, gas, and also telephone and internet services. None of those can be shut off during the public health emergency. For telephone and internet, they can reduce your service level, but they can't get rid of it completely. And most exciting to me is no evictions. You cannot be evicted during the public health emergency or for 60 days after. So even if right now there is a court order giving your landlord permission to evict you, you cannot be evicted during the public health emergency or for 60 days after. Landlords also can't file cases during the public health emergency. So if your landlord has filed a case against you since March 11th, you should call 202-780-2575 and talk to an attorney about that. It may have been an illegal filing, and so it is possible that you can get that dismissed. So your landlord can't file cases against you now, and if a case got filed against you since March 11th, you should talk to an attorney. When the public health emergency is over, or actually anytime during the public health emergency, your landlord has to offer you a payment plan if you get behind on your rent because of anything related to COVID, directly or indirectly. If that's the cause of you getting behind on your rent, then your landlord must offer you a payment plan. And it's for any rent that comes due during the public health emergency and actually for 12 months after the public health emergency. So let's say the public health emergency does end on July 24th, 2020. Any rent that I'm behind related and I lost my job today and I didn't get a new job until a year from now, all of that rent that I'm behind, even a year from now, the landlord has to include in this payment plan. The payment plan has to be at least for 12 months, and it has to be equal installments. You can pay extra, but they can't say like pay half of it now and then we'll spread the rest out over 12 months. It's got to be a nice long payment plan for you. So again, you're still obligated to pay your rent, but if for whatever reason, and there are many good reasons right now, you cannot be evicted right now and for quite some time. And your landlord has to offer you a payment plan after this is all over. Some are offering the payment plan starting now, but you don't have to sign up for the payment plan until you're ready. So don't feel obligated like, oh, I have to sign up for a payment plan now. If you've just lost your job and you don't know when your new job is starting, don't sign up for a payment plan because how are you planning a plan, right? I'm checking my notes of all the things I wanted to mention. Mortgages, not forgetting the mortgages. If you own a home and you have a mortgage and you can't pay your mortgage, contact your lender. They must offer you a mortgage deferral. So that means that you won't have to make payments towards your mortgage for a certain amount of time. And lenders also have to offer payment plans. The other important right around COVID is if you live in a multi-unit building that has common areas, landlords now have a legal obligation to clean the common areas, commonly touched places, handrails on stairs, doorknobs, laundry rooms, things like that. It's commonly touched surfaces. They have to clean them regularly. And if maintenance people are coming into your building, then the landlord has to provide, they have to either be wearing masks or the landlord has to provide them with masks, any kind of maintenance people or contractors coming to make repairs. So those are your COVID special rights. So again, if you have any questions, if your landlord sends you a notice, if you have been sued, please, please, please call 202-780-2575, 202-780-2575, and talk to an attorney about what your rights are. And please do not feel obligated to move out of your home. You do not have to move out of your home during a public health emergency under any circumstances. You don't have to pay rent increases. You are still entitled to get repairs. Even if you are not paying your rent right now, you are still entitled to get repairs. If something is broken, you are entitled to have it repaired, and you should call your landlord, and your landlord must provide a mask to whoever is coming to fix it. I believe there are going to be questions at the end, but those are the main points that I want you guys to hear about your housing at this time.
Thank you. That was extraordinarily informative. Right now, I want to remind you guys that we are taking questions on the chat line, and then we will be responding to questions sent to jhconnects@jhu.edu. And up next, I think we have Melissa. Oh, Christina Bajewski. Thank you. Attorney with the pro bono access to justice practice, legal counsel for the elderly. And with that, Christina, please take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Stephen. And thank you all for having me and LCE as part of this panel. As Stephen mentioned, I am an attorney at Legal Counsel for the Elderly, and Legal Counsel for the Elderly is a nonprofit organization. It's affiliated with AARP, and our goal is to champion older DC residents, 60 years and older, to enable them to receive free legal services and social work services to those who are in need. And so part of my practice is that we help DC seniors create very important, what we call life planning documents or estate planning documents that help people prepare for what will happen in the future should they not be able to make decisions for themselves, and to help prepare for after they pass away, what will happen to their property and estate. So we partner we take cases in-house, but we also partner with a lot of firms and government organizations here in DC to have a greater reach to our clients who are in need of creating these documents. And these documents have obviously become very more crucial during this COVID-19 crisis. So I'm here to talk over the 3 different and main top documents, and then take any questions that you might have. So I will start with the powers of attorney. And powers of attorney are documents that are effective only during one's lifetime. So they are powers of attorney both for finances and for healthcare. And so this first slide discusses the main points about financial powers of attorney, which essentially is more of a general power of attorney when compared to a healthcare power of attorney. It has very broad sweeping powers that you can appoint an agent to help you handle if you're no longer able to do so. We encourage DC residents to create these as a way to prepare and plan for the future in case you need them. So we are always encouraging people, no matter whether you think you are going to need them or not, to start thinking about who you would trust to help make decisions for you and help make decisions according to your wishes and your desires. And so for powers of attorney for finances, there are two options. You can have that power of attorney go into effect as soon as you sign the power of attorney, which means that it would be immediate. And the other option is for it to only go into effect when a physician, one or two physicians have determined that you are not able to make your own decisions, essentially if you do not have mental capacity anymore. And so that is called a springing power of attorney. So those are the two options that you can have. And the power of attorney, it outlines all the different decisions that you can have your agent, or what they call attorney in fact, in the document to help you with. You can discuss those types of powers with your attorney so that you can decide whether you want to give that person power or not. And it's also important to know that for both the powers of attorney for healthcare and finance, they can be revoked at any time. So you can change the person you appoint, and this must be in writing because you want to give notice to the person that has a copy of the power of attorney and who might rely on it, that you no longer want the person appointed to act on your behalf. And this is especially important if there are any misuses of power by the person that you appoint. And so next slide, please. Thank you. So this is a slide on how to select an agent, and this is important to review and discuss because this essentially, we want you to be very sure about who you are appointing as your agent under the power of attorney. We always say it's best to appoint someone who has a lot of the great qualities you would want because this person is going to help handle your finances and your healthcare decisions. So we say that family members or friends who have the following characteristics, who are honest, reliable, trustworthy, and who have a history of sound financial management, those would make very good agents. We do ask as a best practice to avoid ex-spouses, healthcare providers, and obviously people who might be known to dominate or put pressure on you. So those are just considerations to keep in mind when deciding who you want to trust to make those decisions for you. And essentially a good agent will be acting as your substitute decision maker. So they must act in your best interest. And we also have flyers that we provide to our clients to hand out to their agents about their responsibilities under the power of attorney. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So similar to a financial power of attorney, a healthcare power of attorney follows a similar format, except it allows you to empower someone to be appointed to make medical decisions for you. Our power of attorney at Legal Counsel for the Elderly, we have two different portions of our power of attorney. A general power of attorney for healthcare essentially just allows you to name someone, put their contact information in the document so that your physician and a hospital can easily contact that person if you're no longer able to make your own decisions. And to clarify, unlike a financial power of attorney, a healthcare power of attorney only goes into effect when you are no longer able to do so. So at least one physician has to determine that you are incapacitated and not able to communicate in any way or don't have the mental capacity to make decisions at that time. Unlike a financial power of attorney, which can go into effect immediately. So that's not the case here. So I want to assure everyone that this would only come into effect if you're not able to do so yourself. The other portion of our template at LCE, but it could be a separate document when you're talking to other organizations and providers, is what's called the living will or advanced directive. And here is where you give more detailed instructions about the medical treatments that you do or do not want to receive. And this is something that we ask our clients to think through. A lot of people want to discuss this with their family members that they're going to appoint as their agent, to have these discussions ahead of time. But this document would allow you to put those wishes into writing. And if you have specificity about organ donations or anything like that, you can write those into the power of attorney as well. And so, again, these are only effective if you're not able to make decisions for yourself, and like the power of attorney for finances, can be revoked at any time. Okay, next slide, please. And this is the last slide. So now we turn to the document that would control after you pass away. So we talked about the powers of attorney, which are no longer valid after you pass away, but this is when the will takes over. And the great thing about the will is that it empowers our clients and DC seniors to do basically three things. It allows you to give personal property and determine who you would like to inherit your personal and real property if you are a homeowner in DC. It allows you to appoint what we call personal representative, also known as an executor, to help distribute your property in line with the wishes that are documented in the will. And it also allows you to outline your funeral wishes and burial wishes as well into the document. Again, the will, just like powers of attorney, can be revoked and changed at any time throughout your lifetime. And it must be in writing. So if you are changing anything in the will, you can just create a new will that essentially would state it's revoking all other wills that came before it. And in DC, a will has to be witnessed by 2 credible witnesses, meaning that the person has to be 18 and older and not someone who is going to benefit from the will, so not a beneficiary, and signed by you. It does not need to be notarized in DC. So that is what would make it a valid will. And I think with that, the next slide, please, just has our legal counsel for the elderly hotline number. You can call. We are definitely still taking clients. We would talk with you about whether you qualify for our free pro bono services. So our number is 202-434-2120, and we would be happy to take any questions after the panel. Thank you.
Thanks again. Thanks, Christina, for that wonderful presentation. Again, just a reminder that we will be taking questions at the end of the session. You can type your questions in the email chat box, or you can submit them to. I keep losing this number, this email address, jhconnects. CONNECTS @jhu.edu. And with that said, let's transition this presentation to Melissa Bird, the Senior Director and Medicaid Director for the Department of Healthcare Finance.
Thanks, Stephen. And thank you to Johns Hopkins for the opportunity to talk about healthcare coverage in the district today. The Department of Healthcare Finance, or DHCF, administers the public health insurance programs for the District of Columbia. Our mission at DHCF is to work to improve health outcomes by providing access to comprehensive, cost-effective, and quality healthcare services for residents of DC. We are fortunate here in DC to have universal health insurance coverage, meaning that most residents have health insurance coverage either through their employer, an independent means, or through one of the programs that DHCF administers. And we're only second to Massachusetts in this regard. And to kind of give you a sense of the impact of the district's Medicaid and Alliance programs, through these 2 programs, we provide coverage to nearly 40% of all district residents. May I have the next slide, please? Oh, next slide. So here in the district, we have 3 main public health insurance programs: Medicaid and/or CHIP, the DC Healthcare Alliance program, known as the Alliance, and the Immigrant Children's program, or the ICP program. Medicaid is available to low-income district residents that are U.S. citizens or qualified immigrants and meet other financial and non-financial eligibility requirements. The Alliance and ICP programs are available to low income. And when we say low income, we generally mean someone making at 200% of the federal poverty level or below in the district. So the Alliance and ICP programs are available to low income district residents who are ineligible for Medicaid, regardless of your citizenship status. You just have to be a district resident that you do not have to be a citizen of the United States. And then for district residents who have experienced a loss of income as a result of the COVID-19 health emergency, should certainly consider applying for these programs for assistance during and beyond the emergency period. Within the programs that we offer, the Department of Healthcare Finance, the programs include at a minimum doctor visits, hospitalization, medically necessary transportation. So if you need a ride to go visit your doctor or to go to the hospital, that's provided for you. Emergency ambulance services, lab services, medical supplies, physician services, and prescription drugs. The Alliance, Medicaid and Alliance programs do not have a premium, so you don't have to pay a monthly or annual fee for your health insurance coverage. And there are generally no co-pays. There's a $1 copay in the Medicaid program for prescription drugs, and there are waivers if that's a cost that's too much to bear for individuals. And so for most individuals applying for Medicaid, your eligibility really depends on whether you meet income standards. So with that, we can go to the next slide, please. What you can see here is, if you can see the slides here, the key point is that the agency or the district is not terminating or reducing any Medicaid or Alliance eligibility or benefits during the public health emergency. So the public health emergency was effective March 11th of this year, and from that point until the end of the public health emergency or 60 days after the public health emergency, we will not terminate or reduce your Medicaid or Alliance eligibility or benefits. If you are a current beneficiary and in the Medicaid program, your eligibility should be automatically extended. And the requirement, typically you have to report any changes to your income, to your residence. When it's time to recertify for your Medicaid, that requirement is waived right now. If you are new to the Medicaid program, we normally have an application process, and while we try to follow the application process, there are a few things that now we are allowing self-attestation, a verification requirement. So that self-attestation means you sign or attest that you meet the requirements necessary for the program. The two exceptions we have for that is that you still must, we still must see U.S. citizenship and eligible immigration status. And for certain services, you may have a level of care determination, and that's for long-term care services and supports. If you are currently a member in our Alliance program, again, your eligibility is automatically extended, and typically there is a face-to-face interview that's required every 6 months, and that is not required at this time. It can be conducted by phone. If you are potentially new to the Alliance program, the same change, that the face-to-face application is waived, and you are also able to self-attest of the different requirements, with U.S. citizenship being the one exception, so you don't have to attest to that. And then finally, for our Immigrant Children's program, again, if you're currently in the program, your eligibility is automatically extended. And for those who may be enrolling in the program for the first time, we allow the self-attestation, or in this case, since it's a child, it would be the parents attesting to the child's verification requirements. And then we will continue to check U.S. citizenship, where necessary. You can go to the next slide. And so there are many options or ways that you can sign up for coverage. You can go online by visiting dchealthlink.com, and that's www.dchealthlink.com. You can sign up by phone by calling the HealthLink customer service at 1-855-532-5465. You can sign up for coverage by mail. And if you go to our website, you can find all this information. But for the folks who are unable to see the slide, I will give you the address. First, you go to the dchealthlink.com website. You can download an application or print an application out and then mail it to the Department of Human Services, Economic Security Administration, Case Record Management Unit at P.O. Box 91560, Washington, D.C. 20090. And we still accept faxes. So if you have an application, you can fax it to 202-671-1414. 4400. And I encourage folks to, if you have any questions, you can always just reach out to me by email. My email is melissa.bird@dc.gov. And my cell phone number is 202-834-6318. I encourage folks to visit the dhcf.dc.gov website for all the latest information related to COVID-19 and Medicaid. And then, of course, the district's coronavirus website at coronavirus.dc.gov for the latest information and all district-wide efforts related to the coronavirus. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation. Again, we are taking questions in the chat box and at JH Connects at jhu.edu. And let me pull up my chat box because I saw a couple of pretty interesting questions that I want to give you guys the opportunity to jump into. And Christina, I think these are for you. And I'll give them to you. You can take them, I'm sure, one at a time. What options are available for senior citizens on a fixed income repay tax debt? Right, the tax a year has been extended, and so this person wants to know what are available options for senior citizens on a fixed income. Can HUD housing be revoked because of tax indebtedness? What are liens on property and name and, what are liens on property and name and how long in the, I'm not sure what that question is. Well, just to kind of start with those, Christina.
And I think I might defer to Roy maybe on the second question and just say that LCE does do, because I see a couple of questions about tax and offers and compromise, which is essentially how you would enter
into an agreement with the IRS or the Office of Tax and Revenue to decrease your payments and your tax liability if you were getting notices about that. We offer, our pro bono practice helps to place cases like that for seniors who qualify for our services in DC. So if you have questions, I'm not the tax expert, but you can definitely call our hotline and we could certainly review any notices you're receiving regarding federal and DC taxes. But in terms of the HUD housing, whether it could be revoked due to tax indebtedness, I might defer to Lori.
I got that one. So if by HUD housing you mean you live in public housing, like you live in public housing or other subsidized housing, or you have a voucher, no, income tax liability is not one of the reasons that you can lose your public housing or lose a housing choice voucher or any kind of subsidized housing, including if you live in a tax credit building or anything like that, debts owed to the government for things that are not housing are not grounds to be evicted or to lose your any kind of housing subsidy.
Excellent. This questioner wants you to describe an offer of compromise. When is it used? When is it best to be used?
Sorry, this is Christina. An offer in compromise is essentially a way, an agreement you would enter into to reduce your tax liability. So if you're receiving notices from the IRS and or the DC Office of Tax and Revenue, since that's our expertise at LCE is DC residents, but if you're receiving any notices, an offer in compromise is one way in which you can resolve your tax liability, but you have to qualify based on certain criteria for an offer in compromise. If someone has questions, I'm not a tax law expert, but they can call LCE's hotline at 202-434-2120 to talk about any tax liability or notices you're receiving.
Excellent. I have one other one for you, Christina. At the end of life, what effect does, again, we understand that you are not a tax expert, but I guess you can handle this to the best of your ability. You might have to send it to a telephone number. But we just want to ask, at the end of life, what effect does outstanding tax debt determine? I mean, does it have an effect on care? Does it have an effect? What effect does it have,
So
if any?
I can speak if there's, sometimes we see this come into effect when it comes to the passing of real property to beneficiaries. It only would have an effect if there was a lien placed onto the property or home, and that would take a lot of tax debt to accrue before a lien was placed, and you would receive notices before that took place. But essentially any property that gets passed down through a will, such as a home or real property, would be subject to any what we call encumbrances or mortgages and liens on a home. So that's what I would say about that particular debt.
Excellent. Here is a question about late payments and the credit reporting. Lenders and other management companies still allowed to report late payments to the credit bureaus right now?
So landlords or property management companies cannot report late payments during the public health emergency to credit bureaus. And any payment that's subject to those payment plans that I talked about earlier also can't be reported to the credit bureaus. If, however, you make a late payment on your payment plan, when you eventually get there, that can be reported to credit bureaus. Late mortgage payments can, under some circumstances, be reported to credit bureaus. But again, everyone who wants a deferment can get one. So your best bet is, if you know you have a late payment coming, to ask for a mortgage deferment. So then that payment's not due anymore, so it's not late anymore.
Excellent. This is a pretty interesting question. I like this question. What are the differences in housing issues you discuss between Washington, D.C. And the Maryland region? Are there distinctions or differences?
There are quite a few differences, and we could probably be here past time if I talked about all of them. And I will say I actually don't know much about the COVID-specific protections in Maryland, but what everyone in Maryland should know is you also cannot be evicted without a court order and without, it's the sheriff's office that comes in and executes evictions in Maryland. So in Maryland, you also still should not leave without, you don't need to leave without a court order. Your landlord can't change your locks without a court order. I believe there's another one of these webinars that's specific to Maryland residents that maybe one of the Johns Hopkins folks can tell folks about. And I would call Maryland Legal Aid Bureau with your questions about Maryland landlord, tenant, and foreclosure, because they represent folks in both those areas. But again, most important thing, wherever you live in DC or Maryland, if you do not have to leave without a court order.
Okay, excellent. And the distinction are there are many distinctions in rights. Here's a question: how has the COVID-19 pandemic changed the way that people are managing their healthcare powers of attorney? What are you seeing?
That's a great question, Richard. So we are just seeing that there's a lot more interest in creating healthcare powers of attorney. So that's, I think, the biggest change is people are starting to see that just as you would imagine during a health crisis, that they want to have these affairs in order should anything happen. So we encourage you, and I will just make it clear, we do only do direct services for DC residents who qualify based on age and income. But our hotline number, anyone can call that number and get a referral for another organization in Maryland or any other state that might help with that issue. So just to make that clear, that you can always call even if you're not a DC resident, but that we would only be able to assist directly if you are. So that's a great question. Again, we are just seeing that a lot more people are interested in creating these documents, having questions about how to make those instructions and clear and who they can name and their power of attorney. So we hope people can call if they need assistance with that.
Excellent. I have another question from the audience. Being a Maryland senior have any bearing on your services? How are your fees determined for seniors needing advanced directives prepared? And I would suspect they're talking about hospital services, the care services.
Yeah, that's a great question, Michael, and thank you, Stephen, for raising it. So while LCE would only be able to prepare the documents for DC residents, we would be able to provide a referral to a Maryland organization who might be able to assist. But in terms of our fees for the services at LCE for DC residents, it's determined by your income. So if you meet our income eligibility requirements, which is 200% of the federal poverty level, we would be able to provide those services for free. And we also have a reduced fee panel that you could also would negotiate a reduced fee for people who are over that as well and meet those requirements. So that's unfortunately, just for DC residents through LCE, but you can think Maryland Legal Aid would be a good place to start, Michael, to ask about whether they can assist with this particular type of preparation.
Excellent. Being a Maryland senior, excellent. Let's see. Next question. We got another credit bureau question, but I think you guys responded to that. Let me scroll down a little bit. Regarding legal C for the elderly, could you let us know what the age and income qualifications are? Is it household income or some personal income? If the spouse is considerably younger, does that have an impact?
Yes, so I'm happy to clarify, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to do so. We, in order to qualify for our services, you really just have to be a DC resident, 60 and older, 55 for cases involving Social Security benefits. And then income qualifications do depend on your household size, but the age of your household members would not take away from your eligibility based on your age. So as long as you're older than 60, we would be able to assist if you met our income guidelines. In terms of our pro bono services, for a household of one, is what I can think of right now is about $2,200 per month for one person, and you would have to have assets 15,000 and under. An asset, though, does not include a home, so you can still be a homeowner and qualify for our services. But those are the general guidelines, and if you have specific questions based on your household, I can send you those numbers directly to you. But again, it's 100% of federal poverty level as a guidance. Sorry.
And I can just add, my organization, Neighborhood Legal Services Program, has the same income guidelines. Although anyone can call that phone number for landlord-tenant assistance. We also do wills and advance directives. And so folks who are under 60 can call Neighborhood Legal Services Program for wills, and that phone number is 202-832-6577. So again, for folks under 60, who are also under 200% of the federal poverty line, if you need wills and advance directives, Neighborhood Legal Services can help. And again, our website is nlsp.org, and our phone number is 202-832-6577. I feel like an infomercial.
Excellent. It looks like that's the end of our questions. Again, I'm going to remind you that our lines are remaining open, our Q&A lines, and so if you think of additional questions after the call, please submit them to jhconnects@jhu.edu. I would like to go around. One other thing too. Another reminder. Please, please, please focus on your senses. Tell your neighbors. You know, this is a very important process for a multitude of reasons. And so again, if you have questions about the 2020 census, the Johns Hopkins Network can help you with some of those questions. Again, through jhu.edu. I'd like to take a couple of minutes to kind of go around the panel for any final comments. I'm going to start in the same order that we proceeded in. And so that would be Lori, Christina, and Melissa. And so with that said, Lori, do you have a couple of minutes to kind of tie this up in a nice little bow?
Sure. I think the most important things that I want everyone to know is that you don't have to leave where you are living right now if you do not want to, but you can leave if you do want to. And even if you have given your landlord notice and said you were going to leave and now you realize I don't really want to move in the middle of a pandemic, you don't have to leave. Until the public health emergency is over, nobody has to leave any place they are. And you are still entitled to have repairs and to live in a habitable place. And if someone is trying to force you to leave or threatening you that you have to leave, or your landlord is refusing to make repairs, then you should contact legal assistance. And then I can't believe I didn't say the thing I say in all Know Your Rights trainings. My number one thing is get it in writing, put it in writing. If you're paying rent with cash, or money orders, get receipts. If you're asking for repairs, text, send an email, do something so it's in writing. Put everything in writing that you communicate with your landlord, get it in writing as much as possible, even just a text that says, hey, just confirming you got my rent, text me back, okay. Anything that you can do to get things in writing and put things in writing and if you have questions, please call for legal assistance. There are a lot of housing attorneys in DC who are available to help you, and there's no reason to go it alone.
Lori, did you have any contact information you wanted to share or anything? I'm going to ask you guys to do that too. If you have any numbers or contact information that you'd like to share, please. Can
you come back to me?
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
Oh, wait, thank you.
There
Sorry,
it is.
Got me.
Thank you.
This is a new phone line that we set up, so it just literally June 1st was the first day, so I have not memorized it yet. So generally to get in touch with all of the eviction providers in DC, the phone number is 202-780-2575. You can also contact my organization directly, Neighborhood Legal Services Program. We do housing, public benefits, family law, wills, and advanced directives for the folks that are too young for legal counsel for the elderly. Our website is nlsp.org, and our phone number is 202-832-6577. Feel free to call us directly or to call the Landlord-Tenant Legal Assistance Network, and we will either help you or get you referred to folks who can.
Lori, thank you so much for that incredibly helpful information and for leaning forward into the pandemic and providing critical information during these troublesome times.
Yeah,
Um,
and also just a big thank you to the folks at Sibley and Johns Hopkins for putting this together. It's I'm so glad to be able to be here. Thanks to everyone who's participating.
Christina, you got anything you'd like to tie up?
Sure, and thank you.
While we find your contact slide.
Well, that's a big help. Thank you. So yes, I just want to reiterate Lori's thank you to John Hopkins, Sibley, and Stephen for facilitating this great panel, an important panel, especially during this time. And again, our hotline number is very active during this time still. While we are all teleworking, we are active and available to receive all calls and discuss new cases with clients and DC residents. So please call 202-434-2120. And I will just point out that, these documents that I talked about, the powers of attorney and will, are really just crucial documents that help you prepare for the future. And it's something that we encourage everyone to start thinking about and putting together if you haven't already done so. And this really, the idea is to help promote self-determination and independence for DC residents and the people who are creating these documents. That's the whole point, is so that you are in control of your future. And we look forward to working with you and answering any questions through our hotline.
Thanks again. Thanks for your participation, your guidance during these troubled times, and look forward to talking to you again. And lastly, I'm Melissa Bird. While we dig up your contact slide.
Thank you so much. And there's a lot of contacting that you can do there. Again, my email is Melissa. Melissa is 1L1S, so MEILSA.bird, BYRD@dc.gov. And my cell phone number is 202-834-6318. And the things I think that are most important to remember, if you are already on the Medicaid or Alliance programs, and when the public health emergency started, you should not lose your coverage unless you've asked for your coverage to discontinue. So if something happens and for some reason you find yourself without coverage, that is not right. And so you should call up DHCS so we can fix that for you. If you are not on the Medicaid or Alliance programs and things have changed for you during the public health emergency, I encourage you to apply. Even if you do receive unemployment insurance benefits, while some unemployment insurance payments will count, the kind of disaster payment that's new, the additional $600 does not count against you, if you will, or is not counted in determining your eligibility. So please make sure that you are reaching out through DC HealthLink or one of the other options provided earlier. Finally, I just would like to make sure that everyone knows about the district's healthcare ombudsman. The healthcare ombudsman is available to district residents, and it doesn't matter where your health insurance comes from. So if you have a problem with your Medicaid, your Alliance, your Blue Cross, your Aetna, or wherever you get your insurance, including Medicare, you can call 1-877-685-6391, and someone in the Ombudsman's office can help you work through your healthcare insurance issues. So thanks so much to the panelists and to you, Stephen, for this opportunity today. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Melissa. So I'm going to tie this up by first off giving my panelists a hearty thank you for showing up and providing, again, such critical information in such troubled times. I'd also like to thank the Johns Hopkins Greater Washington Area Network, the Sibley Hospital, Suburban, and Johns Hopkins Kimmel Center for Cancer, and all their associations for providing a venue for this very important forum. Again, and lastly, I'd like to thank the audience for joining us and participating and finding this important enough to participate in. These are very troubled times. As a historian, this is something that I think we'll never see in our lifetime again. And so with that said, it's important that we join, that we share critical information, and that we move forward judiciously. And with that said, thank you so much for allowing me to moderate this very important discussion.